For today's class, we are going to start into the section 1 of your first chapter. Yesterday in our Google Meets, we went over the introduction reading and your chapter projects. Your Google Meets from yesterday can be found here. When I upload the Google Meets, I'll put the date and you'll be able to click on it, click on the link, and it will take you to the YouTube channel in order to view the video. I'll be using the Chapter 1 presentation prezi. All you have to do is click on the material and then click on the link, and it'll pull it up in order for you to, depending on how many people are trying to access this, you may need to give it a moment to load. In order to make this full screen, if you click the double arrows at the bottom, it will take over your whole screen so that you'll be able to see things a lot clearer. As we progress through the prezi, the bubbles will become available to you. Right now, you should only be able to see the key concepts and then the 1.1. As we progress through the sections, you'll be able to access those. So if we clicked on these other bubbles, it will be blank. But the ones that are available to you will have things on them. So we're going to go into the 1.1. Now, as a reminder, this does go with the section 1 reading. It reiterates and also summarizes the concepts that are covered within your reading. And then you do have the questions to answer by Tuesday for the section reading. So in this chapter, we're talking about ecosystems and biomes, and part of section 1 is that we are supporting the claim that ecosystems support life. So we know that all life needs to get things from the environment to support life. The sun is the main provider of energy in an environment, providing the energy for food production and producers, who are in turn eaten by herbivores, and herbivores are eaten by carnivores. So in these ecosystems, we're going to ask the questions of what factors define it, what are the living factors, and what are the non-living factors. So looking at the first one, depending on the environment, living things do depend on the environment. For example, we wouldn't find this penguin here in the desert because the environment is too harsh with heat, and the penguin is just not equipped to deal with heat and the other environmental factors that go along with a desert environment. However, in colder sub-zero temperatures, these are perfect for a penguin. And this is because, again, this organism is specifically suited for this environment. Scientists study these through the science of ecology. These areas where animals and plants live are known as ecosystems. The important factor in ecosystems is the way the living things interact with non-living parts. So that is an important part. You need to know the words ecology, what an ecosystem is, and the fact that ecosystems work through the interactions with living and non-living parts. Biotic factors are the living parts of an ecosystem. It's everything that is living. Bio means life. That's an easy way to remember it. And that ranges from things like plants, animals, fungi, bacteria, anything that is living. So biotic factors influence each other as well as the abiotic factors. When an ecosystem is well balanced, the biotic and abiotic things work together, supporting one another. If the ecosystem is stressed or unbalanced, there will be stresses put on the living parts of an ecosystem. The world likes balance, and when things are unbalanced, things react in a way that tries to get those things balanced. But with that comes consequences or changes to that ecosystem. It may be where a species migrates to a different area, or as extreme as that species goes extinct. It just depends on what type of unbalance is within that ecosystem. Biotic factors and ecosystems. Plants and animals affect many parts of an ecosystem from the atmosphere, soil, water, and temperature. However, animals can also affect an ecosystem by changes they place themselves on the environment, such as a dam built by a beaver blocking a stream. Biotic factors can also provide shelter and food to others in the ecosystem, such as coral reefs. If we look here at this beaver, beavers will build dams for their homes, and those dams will stop moving bodies of water. So they usually build them in creeks or streams, and whenever they do that, it will block off the water flow, and that blocked off water flow will then create a pond, lake, or what have you, a standing body of water that was once moving. So that is going to change the ecosystem and how those things function. That's a direct impact of a biotic or living factor within an ecosystem. So many abiotic factors affect ecosystems. Abiotic factors include both the physical and chemical parts of an ecosystem. Physical factors are factors that you can see or feel, such as the temperature or the amount of water or sunlight. Important chemical factors include the minerals and compounds found in the soil and whether the ecosystem's water is fresh or salty. It is the combination of different abiotic factors that determines the type of organism that an ecosystem will support. So we're going to be looking at the 4 major abiotic factors within an ecosystem. That's temperature, light, soil, and water. Temperature is a very important factor within an ecosystem. In a land ecosystem, temperature affects what types of plants will grow in a certain area, and the types of plants available for food and shelter will then dictate what types of animals or organisms live within that area. So, for example, a tropical rainforest has not only a lot of rain, but is consistently a warm temperature. The wide variety of plants that grow in a tropical rainforest supports a wide variety of monkeys, birds, and other organisms. Animals are also sensitive to temperatures just like plants are. For example, we have 2 different species here. The one at the top is a musk ox, while the one on the bottom is a water buffalo. So if we look at the different characteristics of these 2, yes, they're very similar. However, they have telltale differences that tell us what type of environment they're better suited for. So if we look at the musk ox, we can see, of course, it has the horns and has a dark coloring, but what we're really looking at is the hair. This hair is very thick, very long, and very warm, and that is because of its environment that the musk ox will live in. Musk oxen have that thick coat of fur so that they can survive very cold environments where temperatures can reach as low as negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if we look at the water buffalo and its features, its fur is very short, almost non-existent, and that is because it lives in a hotter environment where temperatures can reach upwards of 118 degrees Fahrenheit. So 2 very similar animals, but they have one very big difference, and that is their fur. One is long and one is short, and that's just because of the type of environment that they live in. Sunlight and temperature do go hand in hand. Sunlight warms the Earth's surface, and energy from the sun gives energy to life on Earth. The strength and amount of sunlight directly affects the life in an ecosystem. A desert ecosystem has a lot of plants like cacti that thrive in heat and dry places, while mosses will grow in shaded, damp, cool forest floors. Oceans and light are also big factors. Deep ocean areas are dark and cold, while areas close to the surface are brighter and warmer. We can also not only look at the plant life, but animal life as well for the light. Depending on the type of environment and the amount of light, you will see different organisms. If we look at the ocean, deep water areas where there's not a lot of light or no light at all, animals have adapted to lose things such as traditional eyesight in comparison to a fish that would be closer to the surface. They have just different characteristics that help them to survive. The third is soil. Soil is one of the largest contributors to life as an abiotic factor for plants and animals because it contains nutrients and minerals that producers and other vital organisms that are responsible for decomposition use. So different areas have different soil types that have different properties and mineral components. Dark soils are rich in nutrients, while a sandy soil has very little nutrients. And depending on the soil properties, ecosystems will differ. If we think back to yesterday when we got all that rain, our soil could not handle that much rain and it caused flooding to happen. And part of that is not only the amount of rain that we got, but also the type of soil that we have. Our area is known for its clay-like soil. It has a high clay content, and clay is known to be a slow draining soil. Now, if you went on the opposite side of the spectrum, the fastest draining soil rather is sand. If you filled a cup with sand and put a hole in the bottom of it and poured water into it, that water would go almost immediately through the cup down through the bottom. In comparison to the same type of scenario with clay, that water would take anywhere from several hours to over a day just to let all that water drain through. Last but not least, water is life. Life cannot exist without water, especially in land ecosystems. All living things need water to carry out life processes. Plants need water to grow, and animals need water to digest foods and release energy. The more water an ecosystem has, especially on land, the more life and variety of life it can support. This picture is an excellent example of the effects of water. So we're in a very arid desert-like environment, and we can see around this area here, there is hardly anything around it. And that's because there's no water. However, in the area where there is water, which is here, you can see plants and trees, and humans are living here. We have all sorts of different types of life that are very much more diverse than the areas out here. Like, of course, we have a few shrub-like plants, but really the majority of life is centralizing around this body of water here. So without water, you do not have life. In our next section, we will be covering the concept of matter cycling through ecosystems, and we're going to learn about water, carbon, and the nitrogen cycle. If you have any questions for your section 1.1 reading and questions, please pop in Tuesday if we're virtual to the Google Meets meeting in order to ask your questions, get those questions answered. If you turn in your work early, I'll skim through them before I grade them. And if I see that you're missing anything, or perhaps you could expand on a question, I'll send it back to you with a comment. And please make sure that if you get an assignment sent back to you, it doesn't have a grade on it, and it's also before the due date, that you check to make sure that your teacher hasn't left you a comment for something for you to fix. After the third time, after you submit something, I'll just grade what you have. It's sort of like the concept of 3 strikes, 3 submissions, and you will then get a grade. I do also encourage you to make sure that you get your projects completed for the chapter. I would get them started so that you have enough time to work on them so that they're to the best of your abilities. But again, if you have any questions, make sure to reach out to me on Google Classroom or through email. I appreciate those that are implementing the email and using that to get in contact with me so that I can answer your questions. But just try to reach out to me if you have any of those, and I'll see you next week, either in school or virtually through Google Meets.